Hey, my name is Cameron Porter, and I work for the Mailroom Barber company. I'm the head of operations. I also handle a lot of our shipping, logistics, online sales, and scheduling. The Mailroom Barber company is a barbershop and salon based out of Florence, South Carolina, that also specializes in manufacturing ethically sourced, U.S.-made beard and hair products for both men and women. So in our Florence location, we also have a manufacturing facility where we hand make all of our hair and beard products. And that entails a couple of brewers and other employees that handle making and packaging all of the products. It's a very small company that was started by a friend of mine who brought me on to do certain jobs, and now I've brought other friends on to do certain jobs. We've kind of built out of this casual work slash friend situation, and we're now growing to get a lot bigger to accommodate more people. So we had an issue where the employee that I had hired originally was coming in on Sundays to do work by himself alone, and my boss happened to come into the shop one day to find him there with his daughter sitting while he was working, which was clearly stated in our handbook that no children were to be allowed in the shop. But being as that it was still a very small company, and that's kind of the environment he was used to, he had a more lax idea of what the rules were supposed to be and what his expectations were. So it just seemed to be a rule that he kind of decided that he would just neglect by bringing her in. So it looked really bad on my part because as his boss, it looked like I had employees that were not following rules and just kind of working a little bit more chaotically than what the owner of the company would have preferred. So that was the real issue of how do we move forward from that. So we were in kind of a strange position because this was the first time that we've really had any type of insubordinates that we had to deal with in the workplace. And one of the main things about it was we were trying to decide who would take the lead on how to address this with the employee, being as it was my boss who caught him, but it was me who was ultimately responsible for him as an employee. There were initial feelings of anger on our parts to have been, betrayed, so to speak, to have the rules not being taken seriously by an important part of the team. So my boss and I decided we would take, the rest of the evening, the next morning to kind of process through this logically, and try to be really objective with the situation about how to proceed instead of, getting angry and making a big scene and just handling it in a really unprofessional way. So the best thing for me usually when I'm trying to process something is to take notes. So I pulled out a notepad, just started writing down what I was feeling, how I thought I should proceed, how I felt like proceeding, and just getting everything out on paper so that I could kind of sift through it and organize. And after that, that set a really great layout for how I would handle the meeting afterwards. Because now that I've got all this information about how I'm feeling and how I need to proceed on paper, I can kind of pick the objective parts, and after my emotions have kind of been retracted from the situation, I can pick out the parts that weren't emotionally driven as far as anger or betrayal, anything like that. So I made a decision ultimately or my boss and I made decisions individually and then kind of came to the same conclusion together that I would handle that meeting with him. Just to kind of reiterate the fact that, the boss position is going to be the person that he directly reports to. And it would kind of undermine my position for my boss to come in and kind of take care of that for me. So which I thought was the best way to handle that. So I was glad that we kind of got to the same point. So we decided that what we would do would be to just restrict his privilege of working on Sundays by himself. I mean, to be able to work in an environment without any kind of boss or somebody kind of overseeing everything is a huge privilege in any work situation. So you know, it kind of got to the point where the trust had been broken between what he was and wasn't doing when nobody was around. So we decided that the best place to start would be to limit his hours back to only when people were there during the normal week hours. Being that this has been a small company, this was really the first time that we've had to deal with something like this. That being said, we were kind of just figuring it out along the way, and I think this was a really pivotal point for us in the company to really reiterate how seriously we do take rules, and you know, not from a mean, you know, and authoritative position, but just from a position of like, hey, the company operated this way for a long time, casually as just buddies hanging out and working some, but you know, this thing is getting a lot bigger, so we need to have a lot more systems and processes and expectations set out to kind of set standards for how the workplace environment is supposed to be like. So, you know, the employee, he wasn't quite understanding of it at first. I think he was more so shell-shocked that one of his buddies was having to kind of come down on him like that. But, you know, and I told him that it was not coming from a place of me trying to flex my power or anything like that, because that's really not how we operate as a company. I was just, the biggest thing for him to understand is that the rules are set in place so that everybody is going by the book at all times, no matter who's there. Meaning, if I was to not be in my position and somebody else was to come in and be in charge, they wouldn't have a previous track record with that employee to where they would say, oh, well, you know, he ignores that rule, but it's not really a big deal because he doesn't do it a whole lot. It's a lot more clear when everybody's following a very clear set of guidelines. So I really wanted to make sure that that was the point that I was setting of like, hey, we need a really clear, by the book way that we do work around here, so that no matter who's in here, who has what job, who's working where, everybody knows what everybody's supposed to be doing, and there's a standard that's set across the board for everybody to follow the rules. So the result was overly positive. It kind of set a new tone. I think I was able to set that meeting and set that tone so that it wasn't an overarching or negative way, but just in a way that that we were all on the same page about how and what was to be expected moving forward. The biggest things that I learned from this were to not let the emotions get the best of me when I need to make a decision in the workplace. And then the other one was just how absolutely incredibly helpful it is to take notes and write out how you're feeling and what you're thinking about situations before you face them head on. It allows for a lot more time to reflect and refine how you want to handle situations if you're taking notes on how you're feeling in the moment. So I think moving forward, that's going to be the biggest thing for me, is to make sure that when I feel that urge to deal with the situation immediately while I'm feeling really emotional about it, to be able to take a step back and say, I'm gonna let myself calm down and really think through this objectively before I move forward, because it's going to help me when I do have to meet with the person and have a discussion about it. Because, you know, if you handle things with your emotions, you're not going to have a clear thought process for how you need to go about discussing it. And the biggest thing with that is just, you can't lead a meeting from a boss to employee standpoint unless you have a goal or a direction for how that meeting needs to go. So yeah, that was really the biggest thing that I learned from this, was just how to have my thoughts organized when I do actually have that sit down face to face with somebody that I'm having a conflict or a insubordination with in the office. Thank you for listening to my challenge, and I hope this helps you with any leadership endeavors you may have in the future.